farmer who hails from eastern North Carolina, where they believe barbecue should only be eaten if it's vinegar-based. He's a Methodist preacher's kid. He's married to his wife, Bonnie. They have 2 children, Jordan and Robert Jr. But the story begins at age 18 when he joined the military and was told he was going to Vietnam. And he had to go home and get out a map and figure out where in heaven's name is Vietnam. Bobby came back from Vietnam. We'll hear more about that. And he ended up working in tobacco for about 15 years, everything from out in the field to his last assignment, I believe it was. He was a factory foreman over 61 women. But then he had a faith experience, which is not the subject of today, but he ended up selling his house, going to college, going to seminary, and becoming a minister. When he was in between assignments and we had a couple ministers leave here, I asked if we could hire him for 1 year at Northeast Presbyterian Church, and that was in 1999, and he won't go away. In 2010, he joined the Combat Veterans Motorcycle Association, and the reason that is significant is that's where he got the name Josiah. He was in an engineering battalion in Vietnam. Bobby loves anything that runs and makes a loud noise, and so he joined them. But what's important is you do not get to make up your own name. Like some of them are, one's named Tag, one's named Mad Hatter. They have a woman named Hot Lips. They have a couple that I will not read here. And he was named Josiah by his sponsor, a guy named Doc, because in the Bible, Josiah was the Jewish king that brought the greatest restoration to Israel. And this guy felt like the combat vets needed help and thought Bobby could help do that. The same year that he joined Combat Vets Motorcycle Association, he had a bypass operation and really entered into a deep depression after that. And I just really feared for Bobby's life, and I feared for his future. He rose like a phoenix out of the ashes, and he started a Combat Vets support group here at this church. It's primarily people outside of the church that just happen to meet here. And now this thing has exploded. There's a group that meets here. He meets with another one across town. But in 2014, a group was formed, and there's a brochure on your table. And this came about because he kept asking me for time off. First, it was pretty simple. Can I go down to Aiken? These people want me to talk about combat vets. And then it was, can I go down to Charleston? Then was it, can I go to Wilmington? And now he's going next week to San Diego. And so he's put together a board, and this wasn't his idea. He had some people that you all know. Bill Collier, who used to be in this club, Clark Farley, an insurance man, Louise Hughes, who taught traumatic brain, who helped traumatic brain injury patients at Moncrief for a large number of times. They put together a board, and so Project Josiah Restoration Ministry is about combat vets, helping combat vets. And I want Bobby Farmer to come up here and tell you about his PTSD experience and the incredible thing that has happened. This guy is now busier than he has ever been, and in my opinion, really filling a niche that is hugely needed. So, will you welcome Josiah?
Thank you for letting me come today and speak to you about this project, which is very dear and near to my heart. There are so many combat veterans that are in so much pain, and you may not notice it, you may not even notice them, but when you get down to looking and going to the places I go, and two of the places I like to go to is Harley-Davidson shops and gun stores. You will always run into veterans in those two places. I'd like to run a clip on two of my veterans. One, the first one being Tim Schoenfeld. Ran into him at the Harley-Davidson store, and he's going to tell his story. And the other one has just recently joined us in the last 4 or 5 weeks. He's on active duty, and his name is Brian Huey. As you can see, there are several, that's just a sample of what's out there. There's all different types of problems or issues that are coming up in the lives of our veterans who served our country well. but many of them have been on 3 to 4 deployments, and oftentimes injured. The first man you saw, Tim Schoenfeld, was in the hospital for 11 months when he came off the battlefield. He has traumatic brain injury. He's had a headache for 7 years, 24/7. When he does go into a grocery store, I've been in with him, and he cannot try to concentrate on what he's trying to buy because he's always looking to see what everyone else is doing. He can't quit. He can't stop that. And I know how that feels. I didn't realize that I was doing the same thing. It was interesting that I thought it was really weird that people would buy a 3-story house. And most of y'all are thinking, what's so weird about that? Well, for 40 years, every time I came home, I cleared my house. Now, clearing your house means you go from room to room, checking under every bed, checking every closet, checking behind every curtain to make sure there's no one in your house. I thought that was normal. I thought it was normal to get angry and hit the wall. I became quite good at plastering walls. But I still thought I was doing okay. And then finally, around 2010, I think it was a little bit before that, Pastor Crow and I were talking about that earlier, there was a meeting that we had at a hotel, and there was an icebreaker for the staff, and we were supposed to get up and tell something about ourselves that no one knew. And I'd really never talked about being in Vietnam. And so I had my bush hat with me, and I walked up to the podium and I said, I was in Vietnam, and I broke down crying. And I said, I have no clue where this came from. And sat down. And it was that point that the walls started to come down. When I had my surgery, the walls came all the way down. I fell into an 18-month depression where I could not hardly leave my room. It was very difficult. I would often go to a restaurant with my wife, and because I would automatically perceive that something was going on with the personnel there, that they had something against me or something was going on, I would get up and leave. I said, I'm sorry, I can't sit here. I got to go. And my wife would get the meal, have it boxed up, and bring it to our truck. Oftentimes in the movie theater, I would sit there, and if I'm not in the right seat, I have to get up and leave. I don't feel safe. I feel very nervous. Now, I think what I have, as far as PTSD, is pretty light. I'm dealing with a lot of men who have much heavier PTSD than I do, and also they have traumatic brain injury. These are wonderful men and women who have served our country. We must see that they're taken care of. They are dedicated people. They at one time, let me ask you this, how many veterans do we have in the room? Not just combat veterans, but how many veterans? All right, every hand you see signed a blank check one day and said, I'll give everything up to my life for my country. That's what a veteran does. That's what he's qualified to do. And all these men have done that. And oftentimes we look at them, and now I don't have any tattoos, so I'm not wearing sleeves because I have tattoos. But many of our veterans love to have tattoos. You've probably seen them, and you go, wow, I don't want to get near that guy. He's got a cat tattoo on, and he likes to have a skull on him, and, you know, what's that all about? Well, everybody has one. But anyway, you tend to draw back from them because you may not understand. If you look closer, I remember seeing a lady in our group, Combat Vets Motorcycle Association, of which I'm the chapter chaplain, she had a heart surrounded by barbed wire. And I believe there was something, she also had a soldier's cross, which is the boots and the rifle and the helmet. I asked her, I said, could you tell me, what does your tattoo represent? She said, it represents my heart going outside the wire. When they talk about going outside the wire, that's going outside your fire base or your home camp. I forget what they call it now. It's called a fob. But anyway, once you go outside that gate, you're not safe anymore. You're not necessarily safe inside. But now you're facing all the landmines and everything else that's out there. And how your heart gets torn up going outside the wire. Well, that was very dear to her. You often see others that will have something on their arm, and it's a memorial where they lost a brother, where they lost a sister. I wear a bracelet. It's a survivor's bracelet, but it's also a young man that was in our church. His name is Sergeant Joseph Derrick. He died in September 2005 in Iraq. 2 weeks from coming home, I got to his house to see his parents before the chaplain got there. What a terrible thing to have to do. We must remember, it's a weekend of remembering. Never forget what those have lost, those that we've lost. But we've got to remember those that are hurting. I hurt inside, and oftentimes I look pretty normal, fairly normal, possibly normal. I ride a motorcycle, and matter of fact, I'm headed up this week to go to Rolling Thunder. This is my first trip for Rolling Thunder. I'm looking forward to it. We're going to go all the way to D.C. and ride around the whatever that is up there, the square, and but I'm looking forward to a good time with a lot of vets. Project Josiah tries to bring combat vets together in churches to do peer counseling with one another. Oftentimes you'll hear, well, you know, he just won't talk to me, or she won't talk to me about what happened. Well, for you ladies, I'm going to try to explain it this way. And I told this to my daughter. My daughter is expecting a child November 9th. And you know what I told her? I said, Jordan, I know you're talking about being sick and everything, but look, I understand how you feel. Now, what do y'all say to that? Yeah, right. Yeah, right. If you tell a vet the same thing, that's what they're going to say. There's no way that you can know how I feel unless you've been there. And why even go to the expense of trying to get to explain it to you when you're not going to understand? And about halfway through, you're going to yawn and want to change the subject. I had one man's testimony that was going to be on here, but we weren't able to get it on the film. And he talked about when he came back from Vietnam. And this happened to me too, that people tried to spit on us. They called us baby killers. They called us everything but Son of God. And we got back home and we were told that we were not able to wear our uniforms once we left the base. We had to go straight home, take our uniform off, change clothes just to go back to buy some gas or get a loaf of bread. Could not get out of the car to buy anything. I didn't know this, but this man told me that he had a job, and the job told him, you are never to mention that you were in Vietnam. That's not allowed in this company. This is 1970 something. He also had another friend that his leg was shot up in Vietnam, and he had very little muscle. Not shot up, it was blown up. He didn't lose the leg, but it took away most of the muscle with shrapnel. And he told everybody in the company, he worked for the same company, that he was in a car accident. It took 2 years for him to tell this Vietnam vet that it was an injury in Vietnam. That's why a lot of veterans won't talk. I'm finding out that a lot of Vietnam veterans, like myself, desire to talk. When I said something the other week about, I have a nightmare every once in a while, and I said, my nightmare is this. I'm on a hill, it's a sloped hill, and just over the hill is the enemy. And there's tons of them. And I'm laying there trying to find something to fight with. There's no weapon. And so I can't find a weapon, and I'm just horrified because I can't find a weapon. And I know that I'm going to be killed. And this man said, I'm glad you brought that up. He said, I have a dream that I'm on my boats, one of my boats, and we see the enemy and they're firing at us, and none of our weapons will fire. By coming together, we're able to reinforce with each other some of the problems that we're having, some of the thoughts that we're going through. And now we begin to feel, as Tim Schoenfeld said, normal. Because we think we're very abnormal. But we're normal for this reason. I am not a doctor. So I know if there's some, how many doctors in here? Okay, forgive me for getting into your business, okay? But I'm going to try to explain a little something that maybe I know a little bit about because somebody told me. I don't know if it's true or not. They just told me this. Anyway, somewhere in the subcortex is a little organ called the amygdala. It's about the size of a walnut. I mean, no, not a walnut, an almond. And it's your fight or flight senses. And what happens when you go into combat or when you're faced under a stressful situation, that gets hyped up. But it does not readjust. It stays at that hyped up stage. And what we have to learn to deal with are the triggers that we're faced with, such as when a lot of our men come home, they're riding down the highway, and you see them get really upset if somebody gets in front of them and they can't see around them. What are they thinking back in their brain, in their subconscious? Somebody's blocking me. There's something going wrong. Somebody's trying to kill me. Your amygdala works 10 times faster than the brain. So if you have a veteran talk rough to you, automatically when you say something and they respond, and I've done this to my wife for 40 years. She thought I was angry with her, but I was never angry with her. And then I'd say, well, I didn't mean to say that. And she said, well, you said it. Well, that's because the amygdala is in action there, and it's got something to say real quick. But I haven't thought about it. So I'm trying to build a network of groups, not only all over the city, all over the state, all over the nation, because it's needed. It's one of the most inexpensive things. We're working with the VA. We're working with other organizations and partnering with them. We're not trying to get anybody's business. We're just trying to help vets. So I would appreciate if y'all would give us some thoughts and prayers when you can. And right now, I'd just like to open it up for questions. I don't know what I didn't answer. Yes?
Would you mind commenting on the current status of the VA hospital?
I really can't comment on that. I will tell you this much. The VA hospital has always treated me well and in a timely manner. I am a squeaky wheel, though. Not everybody's squeaky. And what happens to a lot of vets, they walk up to the desk and they're not helped or they're ignored, or either it appears that they are ignored, and what is just 5 minutes seems 30 minutes to them, and they walk out, and they're not treated. That's easy to do. There are some problems at the VA, and hopefully they are being addressed. I had an issue with Barrett's esophagus. They immediately sent me from Dorn to MUSC. So I know they're taking care of a lot of things. Yes?